Here today is Scott Dark Shadows Twitter at Dark Shadows Twitter. Good to have you on, man. So I have to ask you, when did you first get into Dark Shadows?
So in my family, we kind of call me second generation because my mom was part of that running home from school to watch the show type. I can't say she did it every day, but she did enough of the time. And I grew up kind of hearing the stories when I was little, but it wasn't until the early 2000s when it was on sci-fi reruns that I started watching the show. So I jumped right in 1970 and went from there.
That's cool, man. What is your? Do you have a favorite theme, like from the show, like favorite music theme?
um, Favorite music theme. So in one of the albums, it's called Naomi Suicide. It's kind of just sad. There's a lot of theremin, if I remember correctly, kind of warbly music to it. Um, and of course, they use it in 1795, but it definitely, like a lot of Dark Shadows, comes up at different points for spells, for other tragic moments. You know, Bob Colbert has a lot of fun with his music along the way.
He does. He does this amazing job with. My favorite theme is Clanton's theme,
Mm-hmm.
and I love how it just. You talk about a theme that just fit a character so well.
Mm-hmm.
It's like every time I hear that theme, I see David Selby's face, like snap the fingers.
Yeah. And I mean, it was a top music hit, like not just in our little bubble, but like the bigger world of the 60s.
It was right. It just Dark Shadows did so much right with like everything, like music. It just its theme. Everyone points out Halloween, like
Mm-hmm.
John Carpenter, but to me, Robert Colbert was John Carpenter before John Carpenter in a way, where he was just showing out hit after hit after hit for Dark Shadows. So it's amazing, right?
Yeah. You can definitely see why Dan Curtis liked to pair with him for so many different things and the flexibility of it that like while they're doing Night of Dark Shadows that they kind of take advantage of that of let's tweak some of the themes for the TV show and kind of some of the theater tunes that lead into Night of Dark Shadows and then some of his other films that he got up to.
Yeah, like I was talking about this with Patrick that my favorite one is Night of Dark Shadows, like out of the three,
Mm-hmm.
because it's so psychological. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts on that?
I'm really enjoying Night of Dark Shadows. Like a lot of fans, I'd love to see the final edit because you definitely have these moments of like, wait, this is happening. Now we're here. This was important, but it's not anymore. And like, where did that go? Did they actually do anything with it? Is this a draw plot line? But yeah, I do love it. It's because it's the other two I feel like are much more kind of more predictable films for what they are, for what the era they came out in. But that one was definitely it was a very different detour, a very different way of looking into Dark Shadows, the writing, the characters, the actors, and it told I felt like a story that was really fully baked and left on a very creepy note too.
We are going to talk about the Dark Shadows villains, I promise. I'm just having some fun with Scott here. But so Matthew Morgan is, in some weird way, sort of your first real killer heel.
Mm-hmm.
Vic kidnaps Victoria. He kills Bill Malloy, we'll say. What were your thoughts about him?
I mean, it's a very nuanced kind of a villain to start off with. Of like, oh, he's super loyal to this family, and regardless of what the writing and the acting has led us to believe, it's like, okay, he is a creepy character, and I don't know if we're fully supposed to support him before this happens. But then it's also the Collinses we're supposed to support. Like the show, it's very hard to be a Dark Shadows fan and be like, we don't need Collinses. It's fine. No one needs to be loyal to these rich people on the hill.
Like,
Um, so there's definitely a bit of him where it's like, okay, he definitely did some bad stuff and needs to, he needs to be punished. But on the other hand, it all comes out of this weird loyalty for Liz, and how much of that is him and kind of what's going on with him. He might be a neuroatypical person. I feel like that's sort of how Thayer David depicted him, more so than the original Matthew Morgan. But yeah, it's definitely someone where it's like a lot of Dark Shadows villains, I feel like it's a soap opera. Everyone is nuanced. You're going to have, your good characters make awful decisions. Your bad characters stumble into a good decision or pair up with the good guys once in a while. But yeah, in some ways you feel sorry for him, but in some ways it's like, no, you've crossed a lot of lines here, sir. And, let the widows have at you.
I really like the fact that when Mrs. Johnson comes up to the great house, he's like giving this look, like as he's clipping the hedges, like a look of suspicious, like, is that woman here to replace me? Like, he's so paranoid, like, about everyone.
Yeah.
I mean, not just Vicky or a stranger, but I'm Roger, even to some degree, in my opinion. Matthew Morgan is like the perfect person. Like, if you do not have to set this dude up for murder, he's just capable of it.
Oh yeah.
And Thayer David, I more remember Thayer David than the first actor, and that's just because, not just because he was there longer, because I felt he brought more of an intensity out of Matthew. And an unpredictability that was like you never knew what he was going to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the other actor, the name isn't, unfortunately, it's not in my head. But he kind of was he was definitely like this older man and kind of this more warbly, like, oh, stay away, and kind of ghostly. But yeah, Thayer, as you said, had these highs and lows where he'd just be very kind of almost sad or super suspicious of super spy Mrs. Johnson, and then at other times get very loud and violent and striking things down, and you never knew what you're getting into.
I was telling this to John Philip Betancourt. They need to have Sarah Johnson in how they have the James Bond theme in the barrel where he shoots. They need to have that with Sarah Johnson.
Yes. I just love that whole like subplot line of Mrs. Johnson's the secret spy for Devlin, and then obviously Devlin kind of fades as a character, as a villain, as Barnabas steps in. But then it's like Mrs. Johnson's just still there washing the dishes. Don't mind me, I'm just in the background answering the door for the vampire. Like,
I don't have a 45 underneath the dishwasher. No,
definitely not trying to get 2 salaries out of this gig.
No, not at all. Hey, if I'm getting straight cash, you guys don't need to know about that, right?
And then just, begging for backstory where it's like, okay, you've got a kid, you have a son, Harry Johnson, you have a daughter that you visit, I think during the Dream Curse at one point or another. You've got this sister. I like what they did in the 90s version where they also looped her in with Willie Loomis. Yep. It kind of was a nice little thing where it's like, oh, here's like this upstairs downstairs drama, and like here's the staff and like dishing it out, and
I honestly
quirky characters in different ways.
I honestly think that Mrs. Johnson's family was a cover family in the 60s. I do. I think here's your cover family. If you have to smack them around, go ahead. No one's going to bother you.
But to be fair, I don't know. I feel like you'd be a bit more clever than naming your child after, putting 2 dick jokes into one person's name. If it's cover and there's multiple people, it's not just the family right after the big birth and all the drugs and everything. And just, sure, Harry's a great name for a kid.
We all can't be as clever as the Shadow and like come up with multiple names and multiple identities. so like Harry Johnson, here you are,
Now, does that mean that the daughter is also like a sex joke? Is she like a Nirvana or something?
I would say, here's the thing. If you're literally just picking random names, then yes.
Right? Hey, I can have my own headcanon in the Dark Shadows multiverse. It's a strange little world, but keeps me laughing.
It's like, was she or wasn't she a spy? We don't really know, but it's the fun conversation of it, right? It's just like, who knows? She may have been. But so they go from Matthew Morgan. I agree with you, the ghost coming out, the widows. And I love the fact that you get the ghost of Bill Malloy,
Mhm.
the singing. It's before Sarah. It's before Sarah Collins. So he's singing, "What would you do if the drunken sailor?" And they talk about him singing the sea shanty. What did you think about that effect?
I mean, it was a spooky effect. I think they handled it well. Admittedly, I watched with fun viewing stuff is that I was watching the sci-fi wrap up the whole show, and then the DVDs were coming out, and so I started with 210. So getting to Dark Shadow's beginning was a whole third time around.
Right.
So definitely you get used to, okay, Sarah's the ghost that sings, and then it's. But I think it was a good job with Bill because it's like we didn't hear him singing that song forever.
Right.
Like I love Sarah, but there's only so many times I can hear London Bridge before I feel like Maggie Evans. But yeah, I thought it was a very spooky effect. It was kind of apt with this whole situation that, Bill Malloy died in some ways thanks to Matthew. If am I remembering that right, or am I just making it up again? So, Dark Shadows Wiki, this folks. I'm
In
sorry, I'm
some
not
sense,
perfect.
Bill, Matthew's death is
Yeah,
Bill's revenge in every way.
yeah,
You know what I mean? It's yes, the widows help, but I would say Bill Malloy was in on that ghost lynching, if you will. So that's what it is. It's a ghost lynching without that rope. It just
and then Vicky's in the other room, all bandaged up, and it's just like, oh, okay, something bad happened here. All right, I'm just peacing out. I
I'm
need some
just
warmth.
I'm just chilling. I'm here in this secret room that no one knows about but Matthew and David.
And everybody else, and then not everyone else, and then everyone else again, and you know, there's just a lot of amnesia in that group.
Yes, yes.
They get a hit in the head enough times, it explains itself.
I think honestly, there are so many secret passages in Collinwood alone, maybe even
Yeah,
Collinsport, that no one knows.
yeah.
So it's like, do I find it hard to believe that Elizabeth didn't know about that? Not really.
Yeah.
Because, just because you're the matriarch of a house doesn't mean you're told everything or shown everything or everything. A lot of the time, secret passages aren't put in those blueprints for reasons. Something Patrick was talking about. Remember, this house was built to defend, like for attack, for during the wars. So they would need
Yes.
secret places to hide or escape from,
Yeah.
which I found neat.
And
So, go ahead. Sorry.
oh, sorry, I was going to add, and then I don't know if it's the show or Big Finish Productions hints at kind of the Collins trade port being involved with smuggling as well. And so that's a whole nother, why would you have secret passage? It's like, well, maybe you have rum that you didn't want to get taxed that month and you just shove it behind the bookcase until no one's paying attention and then you sell it to the highest bidder. But and a lot of times with those older houses too, it's they build them to be very structurally stable, and sometimes you just have these weird spaces that they're just like, you know what, we're just going to put a bunch of bricks and sand in it, then nothing will come to move in here. It's more stable, so it's not unheard of to be like, this wall's oddly thick over here, but not anywhere else in this space.
And there
um
and there isn't a body behind any of these walls.
definitely not, definitely not those brick pillars in the basement. There's not a
No,
whole line of trasks holding the whole house up.
we may not have them in alphabetical order either. They're just there.
They're just nicely curated and somewhat preserved.
Yes, yes, sir. Yes. So they go from. Oh, sorry, I forgot to ask you. Did you feel Burke was a heel, a villain?
Burke definitely started off as. I mean, it's hard to say because I'm like, to be fair, his relationship with Roger and how early Roger is, it's like Roger's not a great character.
No, he's not.
There's initially there's things where it's almost like, is he a sexual predator with Victoria because he like comes into her bedroom the
Right.
first night in a creepy way.
Yeah.
Um, Roger did actually kill someone in that drive-by situation back in the day, so I could see Burke being pissed off there. But on the other hand, it's like taking it out on Liz is, it's a little, it's not necessarily, it's a little bit stronger retaliation than it should be and unfocused, but And then, obviously when Barnabas comes along, they kind of are like, okay, you're the new antagonist. We can't have Burke and the Logansport shipping fleet fighting with Liz. This plot line is not as interesting as a vampire or Jason McGuire blackmailing everybody. So we'll just redeem Roger on the side here.
So I like the fact that I always felt Burke is shades of gray. Mm-hmm. He's neither good nor bad. He's sort of the middle, the gray area. Mm-hmm. Because he's not out to murder someone necessarily. He's just out for revenge. Mm-hmm. But for me, it's how far he'll go to take that revenge.
Yeah.
But what I love Vicky's initial thought, oh my God, did he kill Bill Malloy? And then you're with the, because of the pen thing.
Oh gosh, the filigree pen. Right? That's the real villain of Dark Shadows, kids.
The pen. How many are these? There's only a couple.
Rarest thing in the world, a pen.
Right. Well, here in my house, that's the case because finding pens is like finding a needle in a haystack.
Yeah, but no one was writing with them. I understand the magic of pens disappear the minute you need them, but normally you open the junk drawer and it's filled with pens because you don't need one, and then the minute you do, it's the junk drawer is filled with junk. What's that?
Scott, man, I'll send you my kids to your house, man, and they'll gladly make those pens disappear, dog.
There you go.
But it's the thing. That's the thing that gets me. It's like Vicky actually believed Burke could murder somebody. That's what I love. The human error too of Dark Shadows. Somebody might assume something, but it doesn't mean they're right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It just, so they take, instead of, Burke, Malloy, but now we get this woman out of nowhere, Laura Collins.
Laura Murdoch, Stockbridge, Radcliffe, Collins herself. Probably a few other names along the way.
So what were your thoughts on the Phoenix, man?
Oh, she is my favorite. It's fun because I'm like, I don't know if she's actually a villain, because would it have been a bad thing to take David in the flame? Was she just burning him alive, or was she giving him this super cool immortal life in a different plane of reality? We don't, and that's what I love. It's we never get that answer, and you get a little bit more fleshed out in 1897, and then Big Finish has had their fun with it. But I love her because I'm like, she's definitely playing for herself. She definitely plays with Burke and Roger. She definitely, she puts Liz to sleep so Joan Bennett can go off to do her her summer stock theater. She messes with Carolyn, who becomes, the number one businesswoman, girl boss of the 1960s. She and Vicky have kind of wars over David. She spoils him up the wazoo to keep him around. But yeah, I love her as a character. I think that the actress did a fabulous job with her. Diana Malay and she has these vulnerabilities with her. And yeah, when they first put her on, they're initially had planned for her to be an alcoholic, and the Dark Shadows Bible talks about that Vicky was gonna look like she had killed her. And they at that point were just screw it. She's from Phoenix. She's a Phoenix. We'll figure this out as we go. But I also love that there's this weird vulnerability with her. And the 90s remake kind of hints at that a little bit. And you can definitely tell she's coming back for season 2. But maybe it's just me, but I also feel like she would have been Angelique as well. They would have just merged Laura and the Cassandra Angelique bit and just be here you go.
I did a video about what if there was a season 2 for the 91 revival. And I'm with you. I agree with you that they laid the seeds for Laura for season 2. Enough of a seed, at least. Because Maggie mentions her to Vicky.
Yeah.
So, and I feel that we would have gotten Quentin in season 2, or at least by the end of it. And I gave the suggestion, if they couldn't have gotten David Selby, they should have cast Roddy Piper. Because no one screamed at that time in the 90s, Wild Child, more than Piper himself.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but Dana Malay, she was amazing. I love that. You're right. The vulnerability where she's pleading with Vicky to help her.
Mhm.
That right there is where I'm like, man, she really wants her son.
Yeah.
She really, wants this to be a mother.
Yeah.
And
is this a like emotional thing? She wants to be a mother to a child? Is this like, ooh, I need to, I'm this witch in Hansel and Gretel and I need to lure the child in the flames?
Right.
And I love that they're like, we don't have to answer this. We can just be like, it's bad for this family. We don't know if it's bad forever.
Right.
And
it's such a beautiful mind fuck. It really is. It's like, thank you for creating this character and not making her just this alcoholic at all.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, because it definitely was like, oh, she would have been this weird little MacGuffin at best, and the focus would have been Vicky, and we got the Vicky trial in the end. We got there in the end, just in a different century, but same difference.
What did you think of this? Josette's Ghost really helps out in this. So we meet somebody who knew Josette with the Phoenix.
Yeah.
So I love the cemetery sequence when Vicky and the lawyer goes there, and they're knocking on the door. Oh, there's no one around, and then the door just opens, right? And there's this guy. He's standing there. What were your thoughts on that? Was that creepy or what?
Oh, it was so creepy. And the original actor for the caretaker, he did it well. He had this warbling voice. They did a really good job of like, is this a human? Are you a ghost? But then there's this other ghost that's messing with stuff. So, and at that point, we didn't know the ghost rules. Those came a little later after we had dozens and dozens of them. But yeah, I loved the caretaker. I loved that graveyard. And just let's go investigate Laura. Let's look up every Laura that ever existed in this town that died by fire in an era when there's a lot of fire-based accidents.
And keep in mind, there's no Scooby-Doo at this time either.
No.
So in many ways, Dark Shadows is doing their own investigation Scooby-Doo without a dog, without the kooky hijinks.
Without Google, man.
Right, with no Google, no internet. We're spoiled these days. We have all that.
You're relying on a crazy old man and a bunch of musty old paperwork to be like, okay, I guess we'll search this one tome out of a whole library in the bottom of this mausoleum space.
I love Dr. Peter Guthrie. What were your thoughts on him? He doesn't really like jump into it where he's on one side or the other. He's sort of like in the middle trying to be objective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Guthrie was a very interesting, he definitely was an interesting character. He introduced some of the supernatural stuff without getting too into it, versus much later in the show where they're just like, let's just do a seance, because we're bored on a Friday night. And there's some lady outside yelling at us. Sure, why not? But it definitely was them easing into it. He definitely was, unfortunately, you could tell it's like, you're a little too smart of a character to last for too long. You're going to have to go because you're going to put all the puzzle pieces together. And unlike Stokes, you're not the type of character that can appear, info dump, and then run away again. And, you've got a collection of talismans at home or something. But yeah, Guthrie was good. And I kind of liked him and Vicky kind of not. I feel like there was a moment they kind of had almost like they were kind of doing coupley like stuff as much as she was with Burke.
Man.
But maybe it's just, they put a man and a woman together. It's the 1960s, heteronormativity. I'm starting to ship this stuff together. Who knows?
No, I sort of see what you're saying. They were together at a lot. You know what I mean? There's times it didn't just seem it was just in someone else's best interest. Mm-hmm. So I think you could pick up on that when you're watching him because Vicky, I mean, she wasn't married to anybody. She's a single girl. There's many suitors, as we'll say, out there.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Why should she
soap opera? You got to keep throwing people together, seeing what happens.
Right, you got to keep your options open for your character. So there's so much for the Phoenix Circle. I love Joan Bennett when she goes after Elizabeth and puts Elizabeth in the hospital. And my favorite sequence is when they are sort of waving their hands in front of Joan's eyes, and she doesn't even move.
Oh yeah, no, it's like good for you, Joan. I mean, I know she has some days where you can tell it's like, okay, she's a little tired. They might have switched the script around, or you're getting confused because we just changed timelines, and okay, what are these people's names again in this moment? But she did well there. Or when she's with Carolyn after she has the fall, and she's like, she thinks Carolyn's a little girl, and she talks about crying to water the cabbages and stuff, and it's this. It's this very like innocent, naive character that is definitely not what Elizabeth Collins Stoddard is. She's always this very in charge woman, and just she fully flips that switch, and it's like, this is really fun. this is not a character we get with her. I don't think anywhere else in the series. Flora's a little more artsy and very free flowing, loose and loving, but not not quite that youthful.
Right. I like that. Oh, sorry, I forgot to ask you. What was your favorite sequence from the Phoenix arc?
Oh gosh. I definitely love when she's just telling David the mythology of the Phoenix the first time through, because it's just such a game of like, especially the first time I felt, from what I can recall, the first time watching it is like, this has to be important. Like, you're not going to spend this much time on a mother telling her child a story unless something is coming from it.
Right.
And it's just this weird dark, like, wait, so okay, we're building this nest and it's all these spices and it's all fun and exotic, and and then they burn to death. It's like, whoa, this is gothic here. Got it. This is a dark story. And wonder how, well, you're not going to bring a bird into a show. Where are we getting here? I also just love when she has David spend the night finally after so much fighting and cajoling and plotting. And then the ghost of Josette's there, and she's just like, no, this is my house. Back off. And it's like, nobody sasses Josette. Like, who are you?
Right. I love that. She's just standing there and she's like this, like trying to reach out. She's like, no, he's mine. Right? That is great. But when we get to the end of the arc, they're in that shack. She's calling to David Hennessy. What were your thoughts, man? Were you terrified for young David, or?
I mean, as I said, unfortunately, because of the way I watched it, this was like the last few episodes I'd never seen. So it's like,
Right.
well, I know he's around in like a little after episode 210. So the show doesn't seem supernatural enough to be like, yep, kid burned up and then we resurrected him the next day. But yeah, I was definitely concerned for him. You're definitely watching it being like, okay, that's real fire. That's fake fire. That's probably a good angle.
Right.
But was that the time where like the beam fell down and like Laura kind of grabbed? Because Diana Millay talks about that they were doing one of her like burning scenes,
Right.
and that something fell and she like grabbed the child. I think she even used the word the child. So it's like, it's probably David. Maybe it's little Nora. Oh gosh, but just there was something in that moment where it did feel very authentic with the two of them. And David's just reciting the Phoenix story, and Vicky's screaming out the window.
Right.
It was definitely, it was a fun set for, quickly pulling together to burn it down in a couple days.
I think they did an amazing, like, to play with fire. It's not, it's dangerous, but they pull this off. I mean, the way they shoot it, Alexandra just yelling for him, it's amazing, right? You're in awe of what, again, this is pre-Barnabas. I mean, we know Josette, the portrait of Josette, how she came out of the portrait, and I got to ask you about that, because so the effects of Dark Shadows, Josette coming out of the portrait, what were your thoughts about that, man?
That was just really kind of cool and spooky. I don't think I had ever really seen something like that. It's just like a ghost kind of living in a painting and coming down out of it. And, you know, at this point, I had heard the different interviews and just had learned that, like, this is kind of, in some ways, Katherine Liscott talks about, like, that they were going to do it with a dummy and it just looked bad, and how she did it. And, like, maybe this is Dan Curtis saw her dressed up as Josette, and it eventually got stuck in his head and came out as 1795. But it just is fun that she does, that comes out of the painting. It's very spooky. She's like running around the pillars outside Collinwood. So it's like, okay, this isn't, we've seen ghosts before, but like she's roaming the grounds of the estate. And I don't think we had seen an outdoor ghost at that point. But it felt more real that she wasn't just this ghost in this one space, but physically moving into the rest of the world, as much as she had haunted books and gone to the graveyard and whatnot. But it was such a cool scene. It was the end of an episode, so, and they don't really come back to that for a while, but it definitely kind of in the back of your head, it's like, where are we going with ghosts now that, like, we've seen this big bit of the ghost roaming around everywhere? What's next?
So I gotta ask you, Jason McGuire, is he the best con artist or worst con artist ever made?
I mean, I feel like he's a bad con artist because, like, he admits, like, I recently watched a couple episodes before this just to try to get back at it.
Right.
And I happened to be, like, right at that point where it's like, Lara's dead again. Jason's at the house. We're not quite at Barnabas yet. So it's very much Jason and a little of Lily Loomis. And Mrs. Johnson's in the background snooping on everybody. But it's definitely, he talks to Willie, I think over the phone. It's before they've brought in the first Willie Loomis actor. And he definitely says something to the effect of, like, we have no money left. We were run out of everywhere. Like, this is the last resort. So it's definitely like, yeah, I can see why this is definitely a Hail Mary con for you.
Dennis Patrick really plays Jason McGuire really well. Really charming, charismatic character.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the interaction between him and Willie Loomis, the first actor. And even when John Carlin takes over, he picks right up on it. Mm-hmm. And I love the build of the fight between him and Burke. It's coming, right? You know, something's coming with Burke and Willie. Mm-hmm. And when Burke finally just decks Willie in a blue well, I went, thank you, God. What were your thoughts on the fight, man?
I mean, it was definitely like, wow, I didn't think this type of show would go there that quickly. Because it's like, fight scenes take a lot of choreography and planning. And it's also one of those where it's like, okay, this character punched this other character. You can't just, like, have that happen. And then, oh, boys will be boys, and we're gonna move on from this. It definitely at that point felt like Burke was definitely moving into, like, this savior of Collinsport, maybe Collinwood.
Right.
And he even has these moments with Liz where he's talking with Vicky right before the fight. I watched this recently, and he says something to the effect of, like, oh, I can't, Liz seems a little off her game. I feel bad about antagonizing her with this weird Jason McGuire around. It's this weird, like, moment of, like, we have to remind the fans that he's was the bad guy, but also we need to now shift into being a good guy in order to have this great scene where these two actors go at it.
They've had him as a, you know, some were going to say a heel, and they're trying to switch him babyface.
Yeah,
I think the transition was really done well when he talks to Carolyn, and at first she's like stonewalling him.
Yeah.
So, but then Joe talks to Carolyn, and Joel Carruthers, my God, he worked really great, right? He really, I know Joe seemed like such a goody two-shoe, but I really like his character. He seems very upfront of who he is, right? So I love the fact that he talks to Burke, he talks to Carolyn, he tells her that's so kindergarten stuff, not talking to him. Like, yeah. Like, I'm like, what? Like, I was shocked he said that to her. And then so she finally breaks down and talks to Burke, and they have a drink together. And I'm like, so wow, they're not necessarily BFFs, but they're getting to know each other all over again.
Well, to be fair, Carolyn's now single again, and she was after Burke at a different point, so maybe she's like, okay, I can pursue him without my mom yelling at me, at least for a week. But I mean, there's only so many dating options in Collinsport. It's understandable. But yeah, Joel was such a great actor, and it was hard to see that with kind of Joe, because Joe was such a like, oh, he's supposed to be this sweetheart, this American apple pie kind of guy. You know, he's one of the morally good characters, so he can't really do anything bad too much without valid reasons, which is fine, but it's not as much fun to play. And then he's Nathan Forbes, and you're like, you know what you're doing. And you can still be charming and kind of sweet, but also you've got that, you know, as Forbes, you get that dark side. You get to gaslight Millicent left, right, and center. You're blackmailing, Joshua Collins over Barnabas being a vampire. Like, you are having a lot of fun here as an actor.
Yeah, and you think he's some Collinsport strangler. You don't know what he really is. Like, you play with fire, right? He's playing with fire. But, so Jason comes to town. He's blackmailing Liz. He goes into Collinwood. Willie, I find this weird. Tubi has the description of Willie, a handyman Willie Lewis. I'm like, wait, that's House of Dark Shadows, not like whoever runs Tubi. If you hear this video, he's a thief. But so
he becomes a handyman after Barnabas bites into him. Maybe Barnabas is just like pulling that nature out of him through vampiric power, or I highly doubt Barnabas is a handyman and injects that into him, although maybe he fed off of a useful person back in the day. But yeah, it's definitely, that's not who Willie Loomis is to begin with. He definitely gets there, but...
Yes, he does.
He's not, Bob the Builder, no. Bad Bob the Builder.
He's no Tim the Toolman Taylor, but...
Right. That guy too.
Yeah, all right. Bob Vila. But, goodness, so Willie and Jason, I love how Willie Loomis comes up to the house and Jason's like, oh man, I did not want to. Jason's not too happy with it.
Yeah.
And I love, what were your thoughts on Carolyn grabbing her Uncle Roger's gun? She looked like she was going to cap his ass.
Yup. She just goes right. I mean, at this point, she is very much this, like, she's kind of taking over Joan Bennett's type of personality. Although to the nth degree, Joan, Liz did not whip out the gun until we got to the most recent Dark Shadows film, as far as I can recall. But yeah, it definitely was a like, whoa, these characters we are very much just shifting the story, and we're upping the ante here of like, no, I'm not just going to be like, you need to leave for multiple episodes, and I'm going to go around and tell all my friends why you need to leave. It's finally just like, no, we're actually confronting things. We're moving the plot forward, and then later on, you've got the gun again at the wedding. She's ready to go all over again.
Willie,
to be fair, he kind of grabbed her, I think.
Yep.
Pretty early on, he especially the first Willie Loomis, it's very much like this sexual predator kind of situation. So good for her to just be like, nope, get out of my house.
There's a lot of sexual tone on Dark Shadows. Whether not saying they're banging on the floor.
No, it's just what it was.
Right. There's a lot of sexual tone of the characters.
Mm-hmm. And
so Willie goes, when John Carlin plays him and he gets knocked around by Burke, he's researching the legend of Naomi Collins.
Mm-hmm.
And, he's...
Or Abigail, they like to flip around a few times about who gave who the jewels from where.
Jewels. Yep, or Abigail, that's right. And so when he finally leaves, he goes into the crypt. Jason's like, he couldn't have left. I had this thing.
He's got all his stuff. We've got like $10,000 or whatever. It's a big chunk of change.
What were your thoughts on the introduction of Barnabas Collins?
Oh my gosh. It was just, you knew all of a sudden when there was this painting in the hallway and they it's there 1 minute. And then the end of an episode, they're like, we're going to make sure you see this right here. And, and the ring is right there. You get the hand coming out of the coffin. Carlin does such a great job with like that horrified shaky bit.
Yeah.
And then he gets bitten on the wrist because, you know, editing at the time, homosexual nonsense, you know, homosexual worries and such.
Right.
But no, I think they did a good job with it. And then like Willie's not around for a couple days. And even in House of Dark Shadows, they kind of do that again, where it's like Willie kind of disappears. You see Barnabas's ring at the, you know, at the restaurant where Maggie happens to go to, and Willie's there and just like, oh, you've been gone for a little bit. Like, what's happening here? But I mean, it's definitely spooky because it's like Willie's this really bad character who wants to get out of town, and we got all the money and all the reasons for him to leave. And yeah, he got beat up by Burke Dublin, but he can handle himself. You know, he almost wanted to beat up an old man at the bar for bumping into him.
Right.
So it's just very creepy. Of like, wait, you got taken out by some hand in a coffin. Like, what's going on here? And then Barnabas shows up at the house. He's all put together. Super spy Mrs. Johnson invites him into Collinwood, and he's just, you know, it's a very like, this is very good. This is very like, something's gonna happen here. And he's just initially, he's such an evil character, and that's something where some Dark Shadows fans are like, Barnabas is the real hero of the show, and it's like, is he? Like, you know, he's definitely the protagonist, but he's done some stuff, and even when he's been the hero, like, he takes out a lot of people in 1897 needlessly, family and otherwise. Like,
he's what some are later going to call an anti-hero, I think.
Yeah.
More than an actual hero.
Yeah.
Where our anti-heroes like Snake Plissken and others are on that gray area, and they tattle the line so much.
Yeah.
You never know which way they're going to go. I feel Barnabas is really your first real anti-hero. Yeah. He kills people, sure. But, I mean, really, if you look at characters like Ash from Evil Dead, he kills his girlfriend because she's a deadite. But, I know that's a weird comparison, but it's really, when I first saw the hand and the painting, I knew what was coming. I'm like, I had seen, because by this time I had seen Dark Shadows. Between my grandfather and mother, I'd seen Christopher Lee, Bela Lugosi, and I'm like, wait, this dude, that's a vampire. You're letting him in the house? No, close the door. Get your crucifix.
He's dated a little. He's dressed a little datedly. He's wearing a lot of jewelry for a man about town in the 1960s. Even nowadays, it's like, gosh, it's like a drag queen level of jewelry you've got on there, on your medallions and your ring and everything. But yeah, definitely, you've got that vibe to him. I mean, he kind of fulfills this gothic thing, though. He's a Byronic hero as well, of like, he's got his dark past, he's got his sins, he's, you know, it's the precursor to the modern anti-hero, where it's like, he gets things done, but he does things that no one else wants to do to get things done.
When he kidnaps Maggie.
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about one of the most creepiest moments of the series that I felt, oh my God.
When he yanks her out of the hospital, or when he's hypnotizing her?
Well, I love the fact that he asked him, oh, would you paint my portrait? I can pay you. Meanwhile, I'm kidnapping your daughter. It's all good here, you know? You know? But, right, when she finally escapes, right, with the help of Sarah.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts on that? Just, it was so, you know what I mean? It was so, oh my God, right?
Yeah, and it's just like, oh my God, like Barnabas at this point has done like everything the wrong way, and just knowing where the show goes, I'm like, how are you going to take this character and get him to being someone we need to root for? Like at this point, I'm sorry, the whole town needs to get out their crucifixes, get out their wooden stakes made from holly, get out their silver, and just go to town with this guy. Like, because Maggie had been this like moral compass. She was the the sweet diner girl. I'm like, okay, maybe she stole someone's boyfriend, but even that, it's like, Marilyn was an interesting character, and she and Joe were fizzling out.
They were.
And just the mental torture he did to poor Maggie at that point.
I love. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, and then just the ghost of his sister is the one being like, we're done here. Like, I'm getting her out. I don't care. Like, I can't fix my brother, but at least I can give this young woman this ridiculous riddle to get out of here.
One of my favorite scenes that Katherine Liscott does, she has a music box. Mm. And she's up in Josette's room. And she goes, I'm Maggie Evans. Bam! Slams it shut. I'm thinking, yes! Yes! Get the hell out of that house. Right? Oh my goodness. So I love how Barnabas comes to the hospital and Dr. Ward goes, Maggie's dead.
Yep.
I mean, and we know better, we know different that she's not. But I love the fact that Willie Loomis is in Barnabas's ear. We killed that girl. We killed her. I'm like, damn. Like, did you feel like Willie's pushing his luck here, telling him that?
Yeah, it's one of those. It's like, Willie, are you just like done here and you're ready to just have an honorable death? Or are you just setting yourself up to get out of this picture, the rough way? But hey, there's some space next to Jason on the ground in the secret room.
Right? There's plenty of room. There's plenty of places to put a body. I mean, no problem.
I don't know. Angelique's under there somewhere, isn't she? There might not be too much space.
She's out there. Well, with Angelique, I mean, you need a very special place for Angelique. I mean, right?
She's popping back anyways. No matter how little fibers and cells you leave of her, she comes up more often than Laura.
Right? A woman. I'm going to borrow a joke from a fellow YouTuber. A woman that has been resurrected more than Jean Grey. So, there you go. So after they tell him that Willie's in his ear, we meet Dr. Julia Hoffman.
Yes.
So what were your thoughts on, well, Hoffman was originally mentioned as a man.
Yeah, Julian, right?
Well, I don't think they mention a first name. They just say Dr. Hoffman, I think.
Yeah, and they definitely say like he. And then in the 90s remake, they do the verse fit where it's like, oh, Dr. Hoffman, he's going to be great. No, actually, it's a she. And I'm like, good for you. Way to like play off of your own history here. Right. As much as by the 90s, it's kind of this, this thing that we have to do sometimes.
Right. So what were your thoughts on Dr. Julia Hoffman, Grayson Hall's character?
Oh, she just initially, it's like she plays this very cold, very calculating, like you don't really know, like she wants to fix Maggie and is so hell-bent on fixing her, solving the mystery, but also like not caring about Maggie's safety. Hey, let's go back to the crime scene and like, let me try to poke and prod you when you're mentally, you've been screaming London Bridge is falling down in the back of the sanitarium for the last couple months, but let me take you back to the crime scene and just absolutely push you to tell me what's going on. Right. Meanwhile, you're supposed to be dead and your killer is running around somewhere probably.
Yeah, she takes such great risks, right? Mm-hmm. You're pointing that out so greatly that Grayson Hall takes this bold risk of just taking her out in public where she can be seen. And even, I love how Burke has been recast by this point.
Yeah.
Timmy George is now playing Burke Devlin. And they're at the cemetery and she's putting flowers on Josette's grave for her birthday.
Yeah.
And that's where she thinks she sees Maggie. And I'm like, you talk about close, cutting closer.
She's with some old woman, though. I don't know this old lady, so that can't be Maggie. Maggie doesn't have any old lady friends. Right. And she's dead,
Right. Dead people don't come back to life.
Befriend old ladies with, helmet hair. Yeah, especially when Vicky, like, has dealt with Laura, and it's that whole, like, you've seen people come back from the dead, and I get it. Maggie was a waitress. She wasn't too supernatural, but like Maggie's death was entirely bizarre, and you don't know where she was for weeks ahead of time. So maybe Maggie is a Phoenix lady or something like that by now.
But I love
go snoop in with Sam and just, see if he's still really sad looking or has cleaned out Maggie's room or not.
Phone up Mrs. Johnson. I'm sure between, Dustin, for Dust and, busting the cap in somebody when she's not too busy, she can spy on them for you,
Hey, she needs a good excuse of why she's never cleaned the other wings of the house out. 20 or the 20 pounds of cobwebs. I love in the 90s remake how the cobwebs are on the side of the door that they normally live in. It's like, I get you lock the door, let the spiders take over, but no, Mrs. Johnson, run the vacuum along that strip once in a while so the spiders aren't slowly moving into the main house.
Right. Mrs. Johnson either works for the CIA or she's an agent of the Shadow. So I really think she could be too. That's the sad part. But so yeah, I love it. I love the fact that they have this woman who just before Stokes, really Dr. Hoffman is willing to kick down the door to find out what's going on with this woman.
And she has whatever the specialty is of the moment. I'm a therapist. I do psychoanalysis and drugs, but also I know all about blood. It's fine.
Right.
It's fine. I can build a body. I can reanimate. He left me some notes. Don't worry. I'll perfect it by the second time around that we don't get stitches any. There's no more scarring anymore. Right. Just wrap it in some blankets, put some alcohol in it. It's fine. She'll look great.
Just slap a Band-Aid on it. You're good to go. Get out of here.
And then she goes back to 1840 and it's like, don't worry. I'm just going to invent electricity to do another Frankenstein.
Right. What were your thoughts on Judah Zachary?
Oh gosh, he's an interesting villain, isn't he? Like the official, like in the show they call him like an antichrist figure, if I remember right.
Pretty much, yep.
Which I'm like, wait, of all the people we've had, how come this is the one that we're gonna lean heavy into it? Like I know he and Angelique have their thing, but like you don't need to you're beefing him up in a weird way. Like he doesn't need the spec right now.
I really think Judah Zachary is the weird inspiration behind the movie Phantasm. I don't know if you've ever seen it, because it's weird because I always feel Judah Zachary could have been like the tall man. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Or the actor could have been the tall man. So I feel Judah Zachary, and here's one thing I never really quite got. Judah Zachary is the ghost of Gerard, right? The ghost of Gerard Stiles, right?
Yeah, when they see him in the 1970s, yeah.
Right. So it's like...
Because Gerard just wants to marry the rich lady. Like, his plot's over. Like, I don't know why he'd be haunting. He doesn't care about the kids.
Right. He just wants the cash, right?
Yeah. He's going to catfish the rich heiress.
Right. He don't need no computer to catfish nobody. He's just that charming. Right. Too. James Storm. I mean, oh my God, he was great.
Oh, but was great, and that sneer with the green lighting. I'm like, how come this ghost gets dramatic colors? Like,
right?
You gave it to Angelique, but she's just, she's doing witchy stuff. So like,
right. Quentin, I mean, he's mute. He doesn't talk right away as a ghost.
Yeah, there's this one shot I have that I like at Christmas time where it's like, they have the red light on the kids looking at the photo with Gerard, and then he's in the back in the green, and it's just this little like red-green triangle in the dark. Anyways, but
that's right. It's
happy holidays, folks.
Yeah. Well, hey, Halloween's a holiday. It's close enough. But yeah, I love the fact that when they finally, Julia goes back first, right? With Zachary. I know we're jumping. We'll get back to Quentin next week.
Peace now. She's like, there's zombies here, whatever. You're a vampire. You got this. You're dead. They're dead. I'm just going up this random staircase. I'll figure it out on the other end. And she probably could have built a staircase if you gave her enough time and a couple, a hammer or two.
Yeah, Julia Hoffman is the original MacGyver.
But she just Yeah, she goes back in time. I just love that whole bit where like she just is like trying to figure out like, is Barnabas back? Is he not? And she finally, Ben Stokes of course is like, don't be stupid. Like
Right.
what are you doing? And of all people, Ben Stokes would know of like, no, I helped put him in the coffin last time. Trust me, you don't want that one. I don't know what your nonsense is about, cars and computers and whatnot, but like we don't want him here. But yeah, and she just like flat out just goes in there and just lets him out. Versus like, why didn't you just like tap on it and like ask him a few questions or something? Like, but it's a soap opera. It's great drama having him run around town chomping on Roxanne.
Right. Roxanne Drew, the vampire that caused Maggie Evans to go away.
Yep, with her fun farewell scene in the convertible and
Yeah.
everything.
With Sebastian Shaw.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it's crazy to think that they're going back to 1840. Angelique's going to get a redemption story.
Mm-hmm.
Julia Zachary.
Yeah.
So, what were your thoughts on that? Here's Angelique getting a redemption story.
Yeah. I mean, I loved it. I will admit that the way I watched the show originally on Sci-Fi is that I watched 1970 into 1840 parallel time, and then it came way around to 1795 later. So to me, it was one of these where it's like, okay, here's like kind of this bad lady, and like, yeah, I've heard she's done some bad stuff. She and Julia have this like weird love-hate, but then they all work together to help Barnabas out. So she can't be as bad as she was. And then upon watching it in a coherent order later, it's definitely one of those where it's like, this is a really cool plot line and I'm glad she had it, but also like she's done a lot of things and Barnabas has done a lot. So I guess I'm glad they ended up together. They
Right.
tried to ship her with Joe Haskell or something. It would have been like, you gotta go repent for a couple centuries before we'll ship you with the good old, innocent.
You would literally need to sell your soul to God at that point if you're going to go hook up with Joe Haskell. You would. But so, what
But
were
I
you?
mean,
Sorry, go ahead.
I mean, yeah, going on, I will say I did love her for that. That like she fully put herself out there, risking, the local religious zealot going after her with the court case and finding his head. She lost her powers. Like she set Barnabas free from her curse. It was definitely one of those where it's like, okay, they've gone through all the formalities of like undoing all the bad stuff that they can do with her. Yeah, there's a lot of dead people, but that was like 2 years ago. You're not going to remember all those people. Pay no attention to the bodies stacked up behind the curtain here. She saved 2 people today. That's great. 2 people that die anyways.
Pay no attention to the people I have hexed, killed, and let them go straight to hell. It's all good. It's all good. But is Laura Parker, Angelique, is she the best television witch ever?
I think she's pretty good. I think she's pretty up there. She definitely has a lot of nuance to her. Like early on, you can definitely tell that she wanted to be the heroine, and she finally kind of accepted, like, ooh, I get to, I am the baddie. Let me have fun with this. But she does have her moments where she can just be she can be this damsel in distress. She can also be like, I'm frickin' Angelique. I'm going to pick a fight with an immortal phoenix. I have no idea what I'm getting into, but game on, man. Game on. She's fighting with Patofi. She's messing around with Judah Zachary, who gave her powers. She snitches on Nicholas to the Dark Lord, to Diabolus.
The devil.
Yeah, But anyways, I mean, I think she's just a fun character, and she just fully like just does not know what she's doing. She's this chaotic, like, I'm just gonna figure it out. Like, it's fine. I've got a voodoo doll. I've got some pins. I'll go there. I love when she meets Aristide the first time. She, oh, I've got this little doll, and I'm gonna make the doll talk like you, and then she just like fully voodoo strangles him to get whatever he has off of Patofi.
It's like a badass moment, right?
Yeah, and you're just like, I know Angelique's badass. I know Aristide's got that dancing lady knife, so he's also, he's badass and kind of sick and twisted, but like, I have no idea what she's getting into right now. Like, why she decided to pretend she's a a performer. Just charm this weird henchman guy.
What were your thoughts on Count Andreas Patofe?
Oh, there, David had so much fun with that role. He had fun with that role. David Hennessy got to have a little fun with it. David Selby got to have a little fun with it. He's jumping through all the bodies. He's just trying everyone out. He's been an old man for 100 years now. Might as well stretch his legs with a younger model once in a while. But he's a fun character. He just chews through the scenery. He can be very proper and cordial, and also just like, no, I'm just gonna pop a showgirl into your body right now because I'm just done with you. You're boring. Turning Edward into that whole bit where he's turning them all into different people.
Right.
Because he was having a hissy fit about getting his hand back. Right.
And he didn't need the hand because he already had powers.
Yeah.
That's the crazy.
Well, he had like 100 years to get the hand back, and like the 100 years was ending soon.
Yeah.
Wasn't that it? He had his countdown to worry about.
Yeah. His countdown was more important than New Year's would ever be to anyone else. So.
There you go, the final countdown. But
yeah,
I forget, was there like a whole like you will like burninate in hell if you don't get your hand back in 100 years or anything like that?
I'm not sure what the drawback was. I'm
sure something good. Like maybe he just died of old age finally.
Halfway through 1897 again in the coffin box set.
Yep.
So. And he's arrived.
Mm-hmm. Victor Van Gibbon himself.
Yep, and they've realized he's Patofe because Julianka got killed. She got 86th, as they say, as a kid. But so it's crazy because when we go back to this, like we're led to believe Quentin's the heel. But we're finding out that's not necessarily the case, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of other things but to be fair, with 1897, it very quickly becomes like Barnabas has completely screwed up this timeline, and like there's no hope for it. Like he comes back and then gets Quentin killed, and then Quentin turns into a zombie for a bit, and then Trask becomes relevant to the house because Angelique gets everybody back in the right bodies, and they all think Trask did it. But like, it just very quickly becomes Barnabas, you completely ruined this, and as someone who lived in the past, has vampiric powers, how are you worse at this than Vicky? Like, I guess he gets the end results, but a lot of people die that probably didn't die the first timeline through.
And Quentin actually does get killed by Jenny and then resurrected by Angelique. Yep. Right? So there's a lot of killing in 1897. Our buddy Barnabas, he's right at the center of all of that.
Poor Quentin Collins. He starts off a ghost, is alive, ends up being a zombie, a werewolf, and then a Dorian Gray knockoff. He runs the gambit for like 6 months of, what creature of the month do we need you to be? I don't think we can quite pull off a Frankenstein monster here, but, I don't know. We'll make you a Nazgul or something like that.
Okay, Charles Delaware Tate, I got to ask you this. Is he a pawn of Patofe, or is he his own person?
I think he's a pawn of Patofe. I feel like Patofe doesn't do a lot with him. He's just like, here's your powers.
Right.
Do the thing I want you to do. Oh, wait, there's side effects to this. I don't have enough time to deal with you right now. Have fun. You and your imaginary girlfriend can have all the fun you want. Like, I just need you to make a couple paintings for me. And yeah, he definitely just feels like he's kind of just this weird, like, miscalculation with Patofe magic, which is wild because the rest of the time Patofe's so calculated and just leaving this one guy who he knows makes stuff every so often.
Yeah, he creates a girl called Amanda, I believe.
Yeah.
I always felt that Amanda was a weird take on Harry Vincent. I don't know if you know who that is. Harry Vincent was an agent of the Shadow. So, and I don't mind my other obsession here. But
I am learning a lot today. It's all good. So, I'm going to Google everything later.
she commits suicide, okay? And Mr. Best shows up afterwards. Yeah. So to sort of tie in Harry Vincent here, Harry Vincent is standing on the Brooklyn Bridge. Mm-hmm. He's going to commit suicide. This is why I say there's similarities. Mm-hmm. The Shadow saves him, though, pulls him back, throws him in his car, and why did you attempt suicide? And it's just dark as hell. It's like melancholy. Like he tells him, and he neglects to tell the shadow about the girl, and the shadow goes, "What about the girl?" Like, the girl? The girl? Like, oh shit, you knew that? It's like, he knows everything, dog. But so I always felt that Amanda was a sort of weird female attempt of a Harry Vincent.
Yeah. Yeah,
And,
based on what you're saying, I can see that. She's definitely, they start off as this Pygmalion creature, and then they're like, we don't, okay, lady comes out of artwork, artist falls in love with her, but this is boring. So, I love that they gave her something to do in the 1960s as Olivia Corey.
I loved, yeah.
But yeah, she's an interesting character too. I don't, there's a part of me that's like, her story's good. It has like its own little bow tie on it. It's a wrapped up plot line without all the dead bodies like a lot of the other plots go. But at the same time, it's like, keeping her around for a little bit could have been interesting too. We could have stretched this plot line out for a couple months. It's a soap. We got time.
I think it would have been neat, instead of having her die, she goes back into like a painting or a portrait, the way they did with Kitty.
Yeah, Kitty, where she gets like CGI sucked into it, and then
Right.
Barnabas with her.
Right.
But then they go back in time, so would Amanda just go back to 1897 and be like, fuck it, to deal with all these jerks again? And chamber pots, man, I loved indoor plumbing.
Right. I need the future, damn it. Right. What were your thoughts on Mr. Best?
Oh, he was just a bizarre little character, like.
Yep.
And just of like, I'm just gonna spare you because you're just so like, I just feel bad for you, and again, we never get a like, okay, is there another implication to this?
Right.
Big Finish stretches it out with a couple of their storylines, but even then, it's he never. They don't bring him back. They don't explain the rules. It's just, oh, I decided you were pretty, and I felt bad for you, and I've done this forever, and I've never felt bad for anybody. So have some immortality, kind of have a reboot. But yeah, it's definitely one of those characters. It's like, it could have been interesting if they had brought him back in a different way,
Right.
or I don't know if there were more of a price with Amanda's bargain with him.
Right.
Because it really is just like, okay, you failed and you die, and Quentin feels sad. Next plot line.
I'm surprised they didn't have. I know they were in the middle of a Leviathan arc. Mm-hmm. That they didn't have Quentin more keep seeking the man out. What I mean? Because Quentin's not a person to forget something, especially a face or someone he met. So I was shocked that they didn't. I'm with you. Use him more.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they did. They had already kind of done the Euripides, like, goes to hell to get girl out of hell, and she gets caught in a spider web. But like, they had already kind of played that game. But yeah, it's like, okay, Quentin, you found this weird cave. Like, after it all happened, you're in this cave. Why are you not just going back into that cave and pulling out all the supernatural paraphernalia until you piss them off enough to pull you in or something?
Right. What were your thoughts on Cyrus Longworth?
Oh, Cyrus. Yeah, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde himself. He was definitely an interesting character. It definitely was a like, okay, we're filming the movie right now, so we're going to shift into some, we're going to shift to some other characters, give some other actors a little bit more an opportunity to show their chops. I loved when they would just have the wig and the nose and the cane. They kept switching and like having the knife cane and the sharp knife cane versus the dull cane. And then at one point it like falls apart mid-scene. He just keeps going with like, just like the bum cane and no blade in it. But yeah, it was definitely one of those where it's like, okay, why are we pursuing this whole experiment here? Like, and Big Finish like filled that in. Sorry, I love Big Finish, so I keep plugging them, and they have some fun with some of these weird plot lines of like, why is this guy doing this in the end? Right. And it just, I mean, it helps because you're like, okay, normally Julia's the one who messes around with stuff like this, and I don't know, she'd be trying to extract the evil from Barnabas, and this other guy accidentally gets the potion when no one's looking. She thought she gave it to the rabbit or something.
No, man, you're welcome to plug anything here. So there's no rules to this damn channel, trust me.
Okay.
Oh, God, especially when I began it. I mean, God. So, but other than Talk Dark Shadows, but other than that, but
You can do a bit of that.
other than that, that's it. That's all I got. That's the only one rule I have, and I even break my own rules sometimes. So, but yeah, Cyrus was really interesting. The fact, I think, really before that serum, where his heel turn sort of begins, is when he covers up Angelique's death. Him lying about it is sort of, in a sense, evil in a weird way.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because that happens like before we get to the parallel time.
Right.
But then later it comes out of that he saw Quentin strangling her, and that whole bit where it's like someone strangled her and they shoved the hat pin in her, and it's this weird like murder on the Orient Express, but everyone is not good at their job. And they're absolved from punishing this person because she was a real jerk, and
Sure.
she was just a jerk in the end. But on the other hand, parallel time Roger, she has to have her justice with him. But of all people, but yeah, Cyrus was definitely an interesting one, and like it just kept going with it. Like initially, he has no idea what he's doing, but it's like, wow, you've got some people there you're trying to work with. You've got some people there that care about you and know something's happening. And you're just like, nope, pay no attention to me, Sabrina. Or I think it's Chris Collins in Parallel Time before the actor isn't around anymore. But
Briscoe,
yeah, Don Briscoe. But yeah, it's a wild ride with him. And then he gets that little basement, Oh, my grandparents used to store their canned vegetables down here. But oh, look, it's a great prison if you just swap the door out.
What were your thoughts on the Leviathan and Sky Rumson?
Oh, golly. I mean, I appreciated that they tried to do Lovecraft.
Right.
And kind of this horror of like, kind of this like whole group and this idea kind of taking over the group and kind of, the horrors within your community already. On the other hand, I'm like, this plot line, the execution of this plot line did not work out. I appreciated they did the emergency episode, but they're like, well, we can't make Bad Barnabas interesting enough. We can't make this plot line interesting enough. So I guess we'll just bring in another lady. She'll be a vampire, and we'll make Barnabas, we'll give a nod that, hey, we promise he's going to be good. We just need 2 weeks to get the writing figured out here. But don't worry, we're gonna fix this flub. And that's something with modern shows. We don't get that. Like, yes, you can tweet what you love and you can vote on stuff, but it's not the same thing as like this show's on the air every day throughout the year, and just and they didn't have all the access to information we had now. They're just going out on the streets asking all the kids waiting for autographs about like, what do you think of this plot line? Even though the show's on TV right now. So you're missing today's episode, but what do you think of them? But yeah, like Oberon and Hagar, it's an interesting story. They pair up with Nicholas and everything. And Sky, I don't like, I get it, he was working with the Leviathans, but like, was that part of his whole why he married Angelique, or was that just like the worst luck ever for both of them?
I think it was just Angelique's own curse coming back a bit.
I like that.
In some weird way. That's just my opinion of it. Like
I'm stealing that from my head canon, though. It might not be real, but it can live in my version of Dark Shadows.
There you go. But I think that it is bad luck, right? It's awful because she seems so happy. But with Angelique, I think it was just too good to be true. His heel turn, still to this day, when I go back and watch it, shocks the shit out of me.
Oh, yeah, because up to that point, he's just this like basic sweetheart. And you're like, okay, I could see this kind of working. And it's a good plot line for Angelique of like, oh, I'm stuck with this normie, but I also have all of you people from Collinwood coming in and messing my stuff up.
Right.
it could have lasted, but on the other hand, it's like, oh, I just love that very quickly. It's like, nope, he's been looped in the whole time. Right. No idea what he was doing exactly, but like, yeah, he's Team Leviathan, people.
Right. He's
they didn't even have to bring the box over and be like, here you go, welcome to the club.
He's the last person you would expect, and yet here he is. Right? Oh wow. Yeah. Trying to think if there's anything I want to ask you. Is there anything you want to add?
No, I mean, I guess again, I'll say what I said at the beginning, which is like, it's a soap opera, and just based on that format, almost every character gets to have moments where like the good guys do awful things. Vicky Winter shoots someone, and she shoots Noah Gifford. Maggie steals Carolyn's boyfriend Joe Haskell. Like, but then on the other hand, you have good guys that do end up doing good stuff. Angelique's full-on redemption arc. Barnabas stumbles into being a hero, Julia, but it's, so it's one of those, when you initially were like, let's talk villains, I was like, well, everybody has their moment. Everyone has their moment. There, a lot of people die on the show, intentionally and unintentionally.
God, man, I should have gave you a disclaimer. I love to confuse the shit out of people.
Okay. You got me.
No, I should have been more specific about, like, this is what we're going to talk about. But I'm like an absent-minded person, so I'll just be like, oh, we're talking about this. It's like, oh, yeah.
You know what? I had a fun ride with this conversation. I'm sure there's a ton of villains we probably could have gotten around to, which...
Yeah.
But no, this has been awesome. Thank you so much. And, thanks for whoever is watching all of our fun ramblings here.
Scott, thank you so much for taking the time to come on with me, man. I appreciate it. At Big Finish, there's your plug, man. From Scott, go follow him on Twitter. I think it's at Big Finish, right?
Yeah. Okay. Where they have Dark Shadows BFP, Big Finish Productions, is the Dark Shadows specific one. But go buy the regular Big Finish, because they owe us a few audio dramas at this point.
Yeah, they owe us a lot of Dark Shadow stuff.
Yeah, we got to find out what's happening at Wincliffe and this Bromwell person.
Right. Maybe Michael Myers showed up at Wincliffe. Maybe they transferred him there.
There you go. But no, this has been awesome. Yeah. Anything else you want to talk about, or? No,
I mean, I'll definitely bring you back on again, because I love bringing people on here and talking Dark Shadows. Mm. So that's why I made this channel, is to bring people on and just talk Dark Shadows with them. I definitely want to pick your brain about the Dark Shadows movies, but I will bring you on when you're free. Please hit me up, let me know, and I'll bring you on and talk again, man. I've had a great time with you. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much, Joel.
Thank you, man. Bye, Scott.
Bye.